everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Mariah and I talk about books and bookish things on my channel. If you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. Today we are going to talk about the 21 books that I want to read by the end of 2021. Some of these books have been on my shelf for a long time, some of them were recently gifted to me, some of them are being borrowed from friends, so I really want to prioritize getting through them, especially earlier in the year so that I can get them back to the people that lent them. We're going to go through them one by one, and I will let you guys know who they're borrowed from, if they're borrowed, or who gave them to me, whether or not I have special plans for them. First is Mystery Mile by Marjorie Allingham. This is the second in the Albert Campion series, which was lent to me by my very dear friend Kim, who knows how much I love Agatha Christie. This is a mystery that was written around the same time that Agatha Christie was writing her novels, and the main character is a detective by the name of Albert Campion. This is like the second book in the series, but you can read these independently, sort of like the Victorian mysteries I was reading earlier. And this one is set in the British countryside, just like the first one, and it centers around an American judge who the gang is terrorizing, and so Campion moves him to Mystery Mile, which is a secluded country house, and the mystery begins there. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one and getting around to it. I also love these covers, and I'm going to see what other books are in the series just because I love these covers, and this is the Felony Mayhem vintage mystery covers. Next is Into the Drowning Deep by Myra Grant. This is one of Seanan McGuire's pen names, and it was lent to me by my dear friend Julia, who I mention all the time on my channel. This is a story about a ship that was lost at sea with all hands when they were filming a mockumentary about ancient sea creatures. So 7 years later, a crew goes out to investigate the mystery and see if they can find out what happened to the ship and its crew. The Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hall. This is a contemporary romance, career romance set in London, and it was lent to me by my dear friend Mason from work. This is a fake dating. Luke O'Donnell is the child of two rock stars who split up when he was young, and he stayed famous, and now there's a compromising photo out there, so he has to find a fake boyfriend to help avert a scandal. And that's pretty much all I know about this. Next is Stephen King's The Institute. This was lent to me by my friend Angelo, who loved it because it was different from all the rest of King's work. This tells a story about a young boy whose parents are killed right in front of him, and he is taken away to the Institute, where there are other children who have equally as powerful, or who are equally as powerful as he is. I don't really know much more about this. I find that going into Stephen King's work, even with the synopsis, you'll still blindsided half the time, so I'm really just looking forward to getting into this book. Next is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This was also lent to me by Mason, and is a really sad book from what I've heard. So the idea is that you get a message on the day that you're going to die saying, hey, you're going to die within the next 24 hours. We don't know when exactly, but here's an app to help you find a friend who is also dying today, so you guys can, have somebody to spend your last day with. And the app leads these two characters to meeting, and I think that the tagline is they lived a lifetime within a day. So next is The Golem and the Ginny by Helen Wecker. This is a book, historical fantasy fiction, I don't know. But it tells the story of a Golem, which in Jewish folklore is a creature that is brought to life from clay, and a Ginny who is born in the deserts of Syria and they somehow meet up in 1800s New York, turn of the century, so 1899 to 1900 New York, and they're kind of trying to build a life, and then something threatens them and their neighbors and threatens to tear them apart, and it's a story of unlikely friendship and immigration, all tied up in fantasy. My dear friend Elliot lent this to me years ago, I think like 3 years ago now. Somehow I've forgotten it was on my shelf, so I'm going to read it in 2021 and get it back to him. Next I'm going to read The Two Princes of Bermer by Gail Carson Levine, who is the same person who wrote Ella Enchanted. This was my friend Elise's favorite book when she was younger, and it was one of her favorite books. It still remains one of her favorite books of all time. It's middle grade, 8 to 12 years old, so middle grade. And it tells the story of two princesses who one is very strong and outgoing and the other one is more meek and reserved. And the strong and outgoing sister becomes sick, and it's up to the meek and reserved one to go forward and find a cure for her sister's sickness and save her kingdom. Then I have The Legend of Dritz, 25th Anniversary Edition, Book 1, Homeland, Exile, and Sojourn, which is written by Aria Salvatore, and it takes place in the D&D Forgotten Realms campaign. This is the story of a dark elf who sets out on a journey. I don't really know much about this. This was given to me as an early Christmas present from a friend of my husband's because he knows how much I like to read. So thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. I've always wanted to dive more into the expanded universes, some of my favorite fandoms, and if you don't know, I'm a giant D&D nerd. So, I'm really looking forward to reading this. Especially, I'm hoping to read it in at least the first book in January because I'm starting to DM my first campaign in January, so I think it'd be a fun little tie-in. Not the same, it's the Senate of Ernest, which is not the same thing, but still a fun little tie-in. Next I want to read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is a West African inspired epic fantasy, epic YA fantasy, I think? Yeah. And it tells the story of a girl who is born with magic in a kingdom where magic is illegal, and her mother is killed, so she is trying to find a way to bring magic back to the land and to avenge her mother. I've heard nothing but rave reviews about this. My friend Talon and pretty much everyone on BookTube has been screaming at me to read this book. So 2021 is the year I'm going to read this book. Next is Books of Blood by Clive Barker. This is volume 1. This is a collection of short stories that are all tied with a similar theme. Clive Barker writes a lot of adult horror. He is known for his films as well. Nightbreed, Hellraiser, like all 4 of them. The original, the 1984 version of Books of Blood, or 1987, Books of Blood was the first Books of Blood, and the Hulu special is also a Books of Blood. Next on my list is Solace by Gail Carriger. This is the first book in the Parasol Protectorate, which is a supernatural steampunk novel. This is about a woman named Alexia Terabati who is soulless. She doesn't have a soul, so she doesn't understand basic things like beauty and art and things like that. However, she can imitate it. And one day she accidentally kills a vampire who had attacked her. Yeah, and then a werewolf is sent by Queen Victoria to investigate what happened and to kind of keep the peace. And the adventure starts off from there. I've heard great things. I've heard it's fun and campy, kind of trashy, and I kind of need that sometimes because I take myself too seriously. Next is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is a multimedia horror book. The idea is that an old man leaves a manuscript detailing the story of a haunted house, and it's filled with annotations and newspaper articles and parts you read in the mirror and all sorts of stuff. This intimidates me a lot. It's been on my shelf since 2018. And honestly, it's just a big chunk and It's a lot. I did find out that Poe, the musical artist, not the poet, is the author's sister and wrote her second album is based somewhat off of this. So I'm probably going to listen to that on repeat while I read that. So yeah. Next is Moonheart by Charles DeLint, which if you're watching my channel for a while, you know that Charles DeLint has quickly become one of my favorite authors of all time. And this is a story about two kids, or two friends, who are drawn into a changed world after or a group of friends that is drawn into an enchanted world after they find some artifacts. And it says, sweeping from ancient Wales to the streets of Ottawa today, which is probably in the 90s. Moonheart will entrance you with its tale of this world and the other one at the very edge of sight, and of the unforgettable people caught up the affairs of both. A tale of music and motorcycles and fae folk beyond the shadows of the moon. A tale of true magic, the tale of Moonheart. I love Charles DeLint. I love his urban fantasy, epic fantasy writing, like mixed writing style. I love how sometimes his writing reads like poetry. I love his writing style, and I'm really looking forward to reading this next year. Next is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. This is a rather beat up copy because it's been bounced all over and moved cross country with me. I did get about halfway through this book before and didn't finish it. This tells the story of an angel and a demon who have gotten rather comfortable in their life on Earth, and when the Antichrist is born, they realize, and the apocalypse begins to happen, they realize that their life their idyllic lives might be threatened. So instead of siding with their prospective sides, they try to stop the apocalypse from happening so they can remain on Earth. I have not seen the Amazon adaptation of this. I've heard it's great. I've seen the fan art, and David Tennant is one of my favorite actors of all time. There is an alternative cover, which is black with gold lettering, and it has the angel, Aziraphale. Look at that, Aziraphale and Crawley, and this cover has Crawley and is white with red lettering. The paired cover is black with gold lettering, and I really want these two. These two might be the only books I would ever stick side by side like this on my shelf. But I love Neil Gaiman with a burning passion. I have an entire section of him behind me. Actually, it's right here to right here is all Gaiman, and I can't wait to add this up on that shelf. It's really need to get around reading this book. The next is The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. My husband read this year and absolutely loved it, and it sparked his reading, like binge reading all the Joe Haldeman books he could get his hands on. This is about a war that has been going on distantly, and the idea is that Earth sends these soldiers out to fight in this war, and when they come back, it's 1,000 years later. It's 1,000 years later, and they haven't aged at all because, you know, space travel, cryo, sleep stuff. And they come back to an entirely different world, and it's not a world they're not sure if they like. So my husband says great things about this. We have mutual friends who have said great things about this. I'm really looking forward to reading this. So it's Les Mis by Victor Hugo, and this book has been on my shelf for 4 years. This book terrifies me. You could kill someone with this book. It is a book that happens at the beginning of the French, or during the French Revolution, or at the beginning of a revolution in France. We don't know. It's a very turbulent time in France, and the idea is that it follows the lives of several characters across a certain amount of time. This has been adapted many times, most recently in the musical with Anne Hathaway, Hugo Jackman, Russell Crowe, and Eddie Redmayne, which is fantastic. I'm really looking forward to reading this. It is almost 1,300 pages long with really, really tiny font. I don't know if you guys can really see that because of the glare from the light, but it's microscopic font. So this is going to be a year-long project, which I will discuss in another video. Next is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is a book that I've heard nothing but good things about. I've heard it's kind of weird, but it's still very good. This is the beginning of a series, and the idea behind the series is that every so often Earth undergoes what's called the Fifth Season, which is a time of great destruction. And that begins to happen, and on the back it says this is the way the world ends for the last time. And I mean, it starts with the Great Red Rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, and with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and a long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon, and there is no mercy. This is a winner of the Hugo Award. This is written by a New York Times bestselling author, N.K. Jemisin. This has been lauded by the Washington Post, NPR, Publishers Weekly, The Guardian. Next is Zero Repeat Forever by G.S. Prendergast. This is about an alien invasion, from what I can gather. It's a YA sci-fi that tells the story of a being known as Eighth. He has no name, that he just has a rank, and his job is to protect his offside, who will actually do the shooting of the humans so that they can be taken, and until the humans killed her. And then it also tells the story of Raven, who is 16 years old and is at a summer camp when the Nox, which is the beings that Eighth is away at, Raven is away at summer camp when the Nox invade and they kill her boyfriend. And then her and Eighth are forced to work together, and that's all I know. I haven't heard anything about this book, so if you've read this book, please let me know down below and what you thought. Almost done. 61 Nails by Mike Shevden. This has been on my shelf for 3-4 years. It tells the story of a man who thinks he suffers a heart attack on the London Underground, and come to find out it wasn't a heart attack at all, and the woman who treated him wasn't a doctor. She was what they call a fairy, F-E-Y-R-E, and he's introduced to the world of fairy. I'm gonna go with fairy. Fear. English sucks. And it's an uncanny place of legend that lurks just beyond the surface of everyday life. The untainted, the darkest of the 7 courts of the fairy, have made their play for power, sharing their heritage. Only Neil can recreate. Neil can recreate the ritual of the 61 nails, or their dark dominion will enslave all of fairy and all of humankind too. So this is a urban fantasy meets epic fantasy. Reminds me kind of Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. I'm getting those kind of vibes from it. It's big. It's very big. But, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it, but it's a dark fae book, and I'm kind of here for that. Finally, I have Criers War by Nina Varela. This is a LGBTQIA plus sci-fi romance, I guess. And it tells the story of a girl who is out to wage war on the Automata? I think that's the name of the game. No, Automata. And her name is Ayla, and she serves the Lord's daughter, Crier, who is thought to be perfect, and she's going to take over after her father, but come to find out there is a fatal flaw in her design. The Automa are like androids, I guess. Anyways, I've heard great things about this book. And that wraps up all of the books that or the 21 books that I want to prioritize in 2021. Some of these have been on my bookcase for a very short time. Some of them have been on my bookcase for a very long time. Some of them are just straight up scary. And I don't want to read them, but we're going to. Today's drink is just Constant Comment tea from Bigelow's. It's spicy and I put just a teensy bit of sugar in mine, and it's delicious and it's very soothing and warming because it's cold here. I mean, it's not like frigid, but it's getting colder. Oh, that's good. Yep, that was the right choice. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications if you want to see more of this face in your feed. Well, actually, it's beautiful pictures of nature, but whatever. What are your top books that you want to prioritize in 2021? And let me know down below. Thank you all so much for stopping by. And until next time, all the best coffee, wine, and books to you.